Within an hour or two after the attack begins, the North Korean military would start to react. Tens of thousands of artillery pieces that are lining the DMZ would begin firing on Seoul, the capital and largest city of South Korea. They would begin launching as many ballistic missiles as possible at the US and its allies' bases in South Korea and Japan. They'd also launch as many aircraft as possible before the air bases are destroyed. While North Korean Air Force consists mostly of old MiGs and Chinese MiG copies, they have several hundred of them. What aircraft do get airborne would quickly be met by US fighters flying combat air patrol missions. The MiG-29s of North Korea would present the largest threat to US fighters, although they only have around 35 of them, and most likely only 1/3 of which are probably even airworthy. Out of the hundreds of US aircraft, when taking into consideration losses from previous wars, one can expect around 20 to 80 US aircraft will be lost. One of the biggest unknown threats to the US and its allies' aircraft will be the newer mobile KN-06 surface-to-air missile system. Very little is known about the KN-06. It first appeared in a North Korean parade in 2010, and it appears very similar in appearance to the Russian S-300. It even uses the same fire control radar as the S-300, called the Flaplid by the US. Based on the size of the system, it is reasonable to assume that the weapon will have a range anywhere from 40 to 100 miles. North Korea's navy is very small and outdated, much of which would be sunk very early on with surface and air-launched anti-ship missiles and bombs. The bigger threat would be the numerous small missile boats and submarines. It is likely in a swarm attack that they could severely damage or even sink anywhere from 1 to 5 US or Allied warships, although they would likely not be able to hit the carriers, which will be very heavily guarded. Of the ballistic missiles North Korea would fire, it is assumed that many would fail. Their test launches have recently had a failure rate of 82%, meaning more than 4 out of every 5 missiles fired would fail. Their missiles are also not very accurate, with a CEP or circular air probability of over 1 to 2 miles. So they would most likely be targeted and fired at cities or possibly large military bases. The US has recently deployed THAAD, a ballistic missile interceptor system, in South Korea to defend against such attacks. Although it is not in a position to defend Seoul, it is placed to defend US bases like Osan and Kunsan. There are also at least 5 Patriot batteries located throughout South Korea to defend against ballistic missile attacks. While these systems are very advanced, it is likely that a few missiles will still get past, hitting their targets. With bridges and roads damaged, the North Korean army would have a much harder time mobilizing. However, eventually millions of soldiers would begin to invade the south. US and ROK troops would be tasked with slowing down their advance, while Allied aircraft attacked the North Korean military from above. This battle would go on for several days and hard to predict the results. North Korea has also historically dug tunnels under the DMZ into the south, 4 of which have been found and shut down. South Korea estimates that there could be dozens more tunnels still undiscovered, which the North could use to then move its army right past the American and South Korean defenses deep into the country. It is likely that they could even retake the city of Seoul in a quick push south. While North Korea does have one of the largest armies in the world, South Korea is not far behind. However, many of them are reservists who are usually less trained and would take much longer to mobilize. While this is going on, it is also likely that the US, Japan, and South Korea could launch an airborne and amphibious landing deep into North Korea in an attempt to secure nuclear facilities and also open a second front of the war. This would relieve pressure in the south, as North Korea would have to redirect some of its divisions to engage the enemy in the north. Now, the million-dollar question in the conflict would be the use of nuclear weapons. North Korea is estimated to have 15 to 30 nuclear bombs. Assuming they still have not miniaturized them enough to fit on ballistic missiles, North Korea would have very few options to use these weapons. They do not operate any large bombers capable of carrying these weapons. They could possibly carry them on their H-5 medium bombers or in civilian and transport aircraft like the AN-24. Another option could be that a few of the bombs could be carried by troops into South Korea through the tunnels, then disguised as civilians, sneak one into Seoul. Either way, the use of asymmetrical warfare would be used extensively by the North. The elimination of the North Korean nuclear weapons would be of highest priority for the Allied forces. It is unknown if the US and South Korea know where the bombs are hidden, although it is very likely that they are well guarded in underground bases. Some of the possible underground locations that may hold these weapons include Pyongyang, Suncheon, Onshan, and Wigu, where most of their bomber fleet is based. This would all occur within the first 24 hours of the war. After this, the battle could go in a million different directions. One thing for sure is that the loss of life would be enormous for both sides.